Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and the 2020-21 NBA season is upon us. So today I thought I'd tier every NBA team. So with that being said, let's just get right into it with tier 1, which is the championship favorites and the Los Angeles Lakers. I think the Lakers have earned the right to be in a tier of their own, obviously being the defending champions. No team has the star power they have, and this offseason they add some depth. We all know how good LeBron and AD are, and then I love the addition of Schroeder, who can add some scoring and some ball handling, especially when LeBron is off the court. I also like the signing of Gasol. He's such a smart player. Harrell can provide some offense off the bench. They didn't really lose many important players this offseason, so I think they're better than last season, and they won the championship last season, so I think they deserve to be in a tier of their own as the championship favorites. Okay, tier 2 is my championship contenders, and in this tier is the LA Clippers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Bucks. So with the Clippers, obviously they had that meltdown in the second round of the playoffs last year, but they were a lot of people's favorites, including myself, my own favorites for the 2020 championship. So sure, maybe they were a bit weakened this offseason, but I actually think they got better with the addition of Serge Ibaka. It's just that the Lakers got more better, if that makes any sense. So this team is still very good, though, with Kawhi Leonard. I think Paul George is going to have a bounce-back season. And then they still have good depth. They have players like Lou Williams and Luke Kennard to come off the bench. Zubac is a good big. I also really like the signing of Ibaka as a big who can play on both ends of the floor. So that's a big addition for them, and I think they're definitely deserving to be in this tier. And then the Nets, they're a really talented team with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving being healthy. That's one of the big things with them is their health. If they can stay healthy, you know, they might be the best team in the East. So they're a really good team. Another thing with them is the amount of offensive threats they have. Every team, when we go to the playoffs, we say, oh, they need another player who can handle the ball and create his own shot. Well, the Nets have four of those guys: Kyrie, LeVert, Dinwiddie, and Durant. And they also have shooters like Joe Harris, solid bigs like DeAndre Jordan and Jared Allen. The only concern with them is injuries and their defense. But I think their offense is going to be really good, and I think they could be solid defensively, and they definitely warrant to be in this tier too. And then there's the Bucks. We all know how good the Bucks are in the regular season. It's just the playoffs that's a bit concerning. They have Giannis. I like the addition of Drew Holiday, giving them another player who can play in the fourth quarter of close games. In Drew, Middleton, and Giannis, they have three very good players, and they have a good system. They're going to be good defensively. Just the offense, that's a bit of a question, but I mean, they're going to be good, really good this season. I think they definitely deserve to be in that tier just under the Lakers. So that's my second tier. For tier 3, potential contenders, I have the Denver Nuggets, the Miami Heat, and the Boston Celtics. So with the Nuggets, it's obviously the combination of Jokic and Murray, and then hopefully the improvement of Michael Porter Jr. I love how the Nuggets have two guys who they can give the ball to at the end of close games. You can't say that with many other teams in Jokic and Murray, and two different players who can offer a different threat. Against a team with really good perimeter defense, you can throw it into Jokic, and if there's a team with good interior defense, you can let Murray do his thing on the perimeter. But it's not just them two isolating, they can play together in the two-man game spontaneously, and that's really exciting. But they're not higher just because their depth, I'm not too sold on it. I think they're not going to be great defensively also. So those are two things that I'm a bit worried about with the Nuggets. But Jokic and Murray are great, and they definitely have some good complementary pieces. But I'm a bit worried about the defense. So that's why they're not in the top tier. And then there's the Miami Heat. One of the hardest teams to put a finger on how good they're going to be. Obviously, they made it to the NBA Finals last year, and that cannot be overlooked. So they're definitely going to be good again. They didn't lose anyone major this offseason. Jay Crowder is a bit of a loss, but I think they'll be fine without him. They have the great two-way players in Jimmy and Bam, and in shooters like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. They have Goran Dragic. So I think they're a really solid all-round roster, not to mention how good a coach Eric Spoelstra is. I think they're going to be still really good. I'm not sure if they're going to be as good as last year, just in terms of the elevated competition, but they're still going to be a good team, and they're definitely a threat to become a contender. But I just have them in the potential contenders right now. And then the Celtics, a team that made the conference finals last year, maybe missed a bit of an opportunity, but they're still a really good team. Obviously, they lost Hayward in the offseason, which could hurt, and Kemba is injured for the start of the season, but I'm banking on Jason Tatum improving, Jaylen Brown improving, and they're a really good young duo, and this is a very scary team with Tatum and Brown and Smart. Good defensively. I think they'll still be solid offensively, and they definitely deserve to be in this tier. Moving on to tier 4, which is playoff locks. So teams that are definitely going to make the playoffs, and these rankings can all be changed. Like if a team starts really well, they'll move up. If a team, is struggling or gets a major injury, they'll move down. But in my tier 4 playoff locks, I have the Portland Trailblazers, the Utah Jazz, Dallas Mavericks, Toronto Raptors, and Philadelphia 76ers. So with the Blazers, I really like Damian Lillard. I picked him to win MVP. I think they have a really good team around them. I really like what they did this offseason with the addition of Robert Covington, because he's a player who can be a versatile defensive player, and that is something they've been missing. They also have a lot of lineup flexibility. If they start Zach Collins and then put Robert Covington at the 3, put Covington at the 4, and start someone like Carmelo Anthony or Rodney Hood. They obviously have CJ McCollum, who's a really solid player. And then I'm a real big fan of Yusuf Nurkic, and of course just Damian Lillard. I think they're going to be great offensively, and then they always overperform defensively, and Terry Stotts is a good coach, so I think they'll be solid defensively and definitely a playoff lock. And there's the Utah Jazz, who are just a really, really solid team. Obviously, they have Donovan Mitchell, who is a very, very good player. We saw what he could do in the playoffs. Rudy Gobert, when you have Gobert, you're guaranteed to be a top 10 defense. They're going to be really good defensively. That's going to lead to a lot of wins in the regular season, and that's going to make them a playoff lock, in my opinion. But I also really like the depth on this team. They have Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Royce O'Neal, just George Niang, Derek Favors. You can go on and on with their depth, and they're well equipped to deal with an injury or a setback. So I think they're definitely a playoff lock, and they're going to be a really solid team. And then the Dallas Mavericks, maybe a less solid all-around team, but more star power in Luka Doncic. He is really, really good. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, he's definitely going to be almost carrying them, just offensively. Defensively, he's not great, but his playmaking, his shooting, his shot creation, his scoring inside, he's such a good player. And then I like Josh Richardson, giving them some more perimeter defense. They're still shooting with Tim Hardaway Jr. Porzingis is injured for the start of the season, but if he can get healthy, he's a really good player. They have good depth with Kleber and Powell. So just a really good team. And then they have Luka Doncic, who is the star, and I think they're definitely making the playoffs. And they have the Toronto Raptors, who are also a really solid team. Just having Lowry and VanVleet in the backcourt is going to make your team really, really good. Two guys who can create on offense, who can play make, who can get their own shots off, and then who are also very good defensively despite their size. Lowry can take those charges. VanVleet gets a lot of deflections and that type of thing. So definitely solid, those two. And then I think Siakam is going to bounce back from the playoffs. People forget he was on the All-NBA second team. So definitely a really, really good player, and can definitely, again, repeat that feat of making an All-NBA team. And then just those three guys are a really, really good core. And then they have guys like OG Anunoby, Aaron Baines, Norman Powell. So three more key rotation pieces. And then the Raptors always have guys coming up from the G League, and they're really good at finding hidden gems in guys like Terrence Davis, the rookie Malachi Flynn, Chris Boucher. So they're definitely going to be solid again. And then the Philadelphia 76ers, I did a whole big preview on their season, but this season they've built around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid maybe better than they've ever had, acquiring Seth Curry and Danny Green, some shooters. I think Tobias Harris is going to have a bounce back year due to the lane being more open and him playing under Doc Rivers again. And then Simmons and Embiid, if they can stay healthy, two of the most talented players in the NBA, and I do believe they can work together. And all of that makes the Sixers a playoff lock and a really good team. And then we go to Tier 5, which is the play-in locks. So teams that I definitely think are going to be making the play-in game, like they're going to be 7, 8, 9, those type of seeds, and really good teams. And these teams are the Phoenix Suns, the Houston Rockets, the Golden State Warriors, and the Indiana Pacers. For the Suns, obviously they had that bubble run where they went 8-0, and then they traded for Chris Paul, which is a huge upgrade on Ricky Rubio. I think Booker's going to take another step, and I picked DeAndre Ayton to win the most improved player because I just think playing with Chris Paul is going to be super beneficial for his game, and that's really going to help him out. He's been low-key a beast, so I expect he'll be good again this season. And they signed guys like Jay Crowder, who can provide some shooting and a bit of defense, and just Chris Paul is such a winner, man, so I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, just Chris Paul, Booker, Ayton, guys like Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder, Cameron Johnson. This is a really solid team that I definitely see making the playoffs. And then the Houston Rockets, I mean, the odds are James Harden is still going to be on the team, and that's almost a guaranteed playoff berth. Just as what he can do offensively. And then John Wall has looked good. Still scared of his injuries, but think he's really good. Like, if he can stay healthy, his playmaking and his ability to get inside almost easily, like without a screen, very few guys can do that, and that's a real skill that he has. And then just, they still have a solid plethora of 3-and-D guys in Eric Gordon and Daniel House and PJ Tucker. And then they added Christian Wood and DeMarcus Cousins, which, I mean, you know, with Boogie, I'm a bit scared of his injuries, and you never know how much you're going to get from him, but Christian Wood is one of the best and most versatile offensive big men. He can shoot a bit, he has a good post game, he can finish inside, he can run the pick and roll with James Harden, and that's a skill that is really going to help him out. And then defensively, this team's not going to be great, but I just think they're good enough offensively to at least make the play-in. And then the Golden State Warriors, you know, they have Steph Curry, so like that's almost, again, like a guaranteed playoff berth. It's just what he can do with his three-point shooting. Again, with them, I'm scared of the injuries and I'm scared of the depth. Like, how many real NBA players do they have? They have Curry, they have Draymond, they have Wiggins, and they have Oubre. And then all the other guys. Wiseman, I mean, you never know with a rookie. Looney, I don't know. Brad Wanamaker, I don't know. See, just guys like that, you don't know what you're going to get from them. So I think they'll lose a few games, but they'll also win quite a few games like most NBA teams do. Just with having Curry's dynamic offensive game, I like what Oubre can give them. Hopefully Draymond hasn't declined too much and he can start to play better as he plays with better players. And I think they're just with Curry, they're definitely making the play-in as long as he doesn't get injured. And then the Indiana Pacers, like the definition of solid. If you look at their starting five, Brogdon, Oladipo, Warren, Sabonis, Turner, just a solid team. They have a good mix of offensive and defense, and I just can't see them really falling too hard just with the solid team that they have. And I like Sabonis in the low post. I like what Brogdon can do as a two-way guy who can play make and shoot a bit. You know, if Oladipo gets back to himself and he's really playing well, they can be a playoff threat, but I'm not too sure about that. And TJ Warren, he's just a really good player too. So just a good solid team, and I can't see them missing out on the play-in game. Okay, next I have my tier 6, which is the play-in contenders. So these are teams that are really going to be hoping to make the play-in and might be a little bit of a disappointment if they don't. And starting off with the Atlanta Hawks, the Hawks are loaded this year. Like, they have like 12 guys who are worthy of minutes. Like, obviously they have Trae Young, and then they added some veterans this offseason in Bogdan Bogdanovic and Danilo Gallinari. They have John Collins still, even though they didn't give him an extension. They traded for Clint Capella, and they have the young guys like Herter, Reddish, and Hunter. They added Rondo and Chris Dunn. Like, that is a ton of players. Trae Young's really good offensively. They're going to be a good offensive team. Just Trae Young, John Collins pick and roll. Collins is a really good offensive player. Capella is a solid offensive center. And then defensively, I mean, they have Trae Young, so they're going to be a bit limited on that end. And John Collins isn't a great defender. Chris Dunn is, but don't know how many minutes he's going to get. But at least they have guys like Capella and Hunter who are good defenders. I think this is really important for Capella to be good defensively, just because they don't have many other good defensive players on the roster. But they're going to be good offensively. And if one of the young guys can step up, like Hunter or Reddish, I'm a big fan of Reddish's, or Herter, then they could definitely be moving up into, play-in locks, because they do have a lot of talent. But I'm worried about the fit. I'm worried about the defense. And then the Washington Wizards. I'm a big fan of what the Wizards did this offseason in drafting Deni Avdija, and then, of course, trading for Russell Westbrook. I think Westbrook in the East is a guaranteed playoff berth, and you add Bradley Beal to that. Shooters like Davis Bertans, who can definitely help space the floor for Russ. A good offensive center in Thomas Bryant. Players like Rui Hachimura and Troy Brown Jr. That's just a really solid team, in my opinion. And then they also have Beal too. So I just think Russ attacking the rim, grabbing rebounds, that type of thing. Beal, his ability to play both on and off the ball. Like, they can play both of those guys together, Russ and Beal, or they could, spread their minutes out and make sure they have a primary ball handler on for all 48 minutes. And they also have guys like Ish Smith off the bench. So they're a really solid team and definitely a play-in contender. And as we go out west, the Memphis Grizzlies, one of the teams with the brightest future, but also still a good team this season. I really like John Morant. I like Jared Jackson Jr. I like Jonas Valanciunas. And they have other guys like Melton and Dylan Brooks. Kyle Anderson's a solid player. So they're going to be really good, just with John Morant hopefully taking a leap in his second year. Jared Jackson Jr., he's really good defensively, and then he's a good shooter. And then Valanciunas just being a solid inside player. And I think they're definitely contenders for the play-in game. And then the Pelicans, one of the hardest teams to get a read on. They're an extremely talented roster, just guys like Lonzo Ball, Eric Bledsoe, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Steven Adams. Their season is really based on how good Zion is. If Zion is a beast, then they're definitely going to be a play-in lock. But if Zion is injured, then I'm not too sure. So it really depends on Zion, but Bledsoe is a really good regular season player. Hopefully Lonzo Ball can be good with his shooting, and Ingram too. Shooting is a big weakness of this team, but if Lonzo is a good shooter and Ingram is a good shooter, Bledsoe's okay-ish in the playoffs, and they have JJ Redick coming off the bench. I definitely think this team is a play-in contender. So those are my play-in contenders. And then Tier 7 is play-in hopeful. So teams that I don't really think are going to make the play-in game, but, they can hope. And those teams are the San Antonio Spurs, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Sacramento Kings, the Chicago Bulls, the Charlotte Hornets, and the Orlando Magic. So quickly, the Spurs, they're kind of in the middle of a rebuild-ish. It's kind of a transition year from guys like DeRozan and Aldridge to the young guys like Derek White and DeJounte Murray. I really like what they did in the bubble, playing fast with Perdot center and four wings, guys like Derek White, DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson and Lonnie Walker. I think DeMar DeRozan can fit into that as he's a good passer, and if Aldridge can be a three-point shooting big man, that could really help them out. So solid team, but I just don't think they have the talent, and they're kind of in a transition year, so I don't think they're as good as the teams above them. The Wolves, the problem with the Wolves is they have a lot of one-way players, guys who are either only good on defense or only good on offense. I'm not too sure about the fit with Malik Beasley and Anthony Edwards. Karl-Anthony Towns is a really good offensive center. I'm not sure about him defensively. Sort of the same story for D'Angelo Russell. I think Rubio is a solid addition, but definitely not enough to get them into the play-in. The Sacramento Kings, one of the most questionable franchises in the NBA. Not sure about letting Bogdan Bogdanovic walk for nothing after sort of the discord with Buddy Hield, but hopefully Hield can get back to his best form, and he's just a really good shooter. I don't like Luke Walton. They should be playing at the fastest pace on the league, just spacing, and De'Aaron Fox running the break and just having spacing around them. Bagley is always injured. I hope he can stay healthy, see what he really is, and then just apart from that, there's not much else. So I, again, don't think they're going to make the playoffs just because it's so hard in the West. And they do have an okay future, though, with De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. I think that can be a promising big three. Next, the Chicago Bulls. It's tough with the Bulls. I mean, they have like talented players like Lauri Markkanen, Kobe White. I'm a big fan of Wendell Carter in a sort of Al Horford role. And then Zach LaVine is a solid scorer, can give you like 25 points. And then they obviously drafted Patrick Williams, who was looked good in preseason, but I think it might be a year too early for the Bulls. The East has gotten better with teams like the Wizards and the Hawks, but they're still a solid team. I think they'll be contending for that 10th seed. Next, we have the Hornets. The Hornets are going to be fun this year, man, with LaMelo. I mean, he's been a bit shaky in preseason, but we all know the ability with the passing and the playmaking and the handle. So he's a solid player. James Borrego is a good coach. If Hayward can stay healthy, Rozier is solid. Devontae Graham's a good scorer. I mean, this team can be solid, but I just don't know how good they are just in LaMelo's rookie year. But still, they have some young pieces that I like PJ Washington, and maybe next year will be the year for them. And then the Orlando Magic, one of the least interesting teams in the league. They just kind of have that core of veterans: Fournier, Gordon, Vucevic. Isaac is injured this season, so that really sucks for them. They extended Fultz, which was a bit of an overpay, but he's sort of promising-ish, if not a bit overrated. Terrence Ross is a good player off the bench, but I could see them making the 10th seed just because their defense is going to be good under Steve Clifford, and Vucevic is a good offensive center, but even if they do, I'm sure it'll be an early exit for them. And then finally, my 8th tier, the tier of rebuilding teams, just teams that are either at the beginning or in the middle of a rebuild, aren't really going to be competing this year, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder, the New York Knicks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Detroit Pistons. The Thunder, I think they're going to be tanking this year after trading away all their players for picks. They have Shea, and I think he's a good player for the future, and he's a solid player right now. He'll get lots of opportunity. They have a few other solid young guys, but can't see this team really contending for anything, especially since the West is so strong. The Knicks, I like R.J. Barrett, I like Obi Toppin, I like Mitchell Robinson. Apart from that, the roster isn't really there, but I think, maybe they can build from this, and in a few years we can be talking about them as playoff contenders. The Cleveland Cavaliers, their roster makes no sense. They have guys like Kevin Love and Andre Drummond who are veterans who want to win, and young guys like Sexton and Garland and Okoro, who they just drafted. It would take a big jump from Sexton or Garland for them to really be a good team. So I don't see that happening. I don't really think they have the will to win or the team cohesion. Finally, the Detroit Pistons. I'm a big fan of Killian Hayes, but I'm not sure about the rest of the roster, so it's going to be tough for them. But I mean, you never know. But you know, for them to really mount a playoff push, Blake Griffin would have to be healthy, and I think that's a bit unlikely that he's healthy and back to his best. So right now, I think they're in the rebuilding tier. Okay, so those are my tier rankings. Thanks for watching, guys.